2 Champions League titles, a Champions League Final Player of the Match award, and a place among the best midfielders in world football. Yet somehow, Vitinha still doesn't feel like a superstar. When football fans talk about the biggest names of this generation, they mention Kylian Mbappe, Jude Bellingham, Erling Haaland, Lamine Yamal. Rarely do they mention the player quietly controlling some of the biggest matches in Europe. But that's exactly what makes Vitinha's story so fascinating. Because while football was obsessed with superstars, headlines, and social media attention, a small midfielder from Portugal was slowly becoming one of the most important players on the continent. No dramatic celebrations, no endless headlines, no superstar aura, just consistency, intelligence, and a level of control that few players in the world can match. Today, Vitinha is the heartbeat of a team that conquered Europe. A player trusted on football's biggest stages. A player who turned pressure into dominance. But, not long ago, many people weren't even sure he belonged at the highest level. He was considered too small, too weak, too easy to overlook. And for years, football kept looking past him. This isn't the story of a wonder kid everyone predicted would become great. It's the story of a player almost nobody noticed. A player hidden behind bigger names. A player who spent years proving that greatness doesn't always arrive with noise, because before Vitinha became one of the best midfielders in the world, he was just a quiet kid from Portugal trying to convince football that he belonged. Long before he was controlling Champions League finals, Vitinha was a kid growing up in Portugal with a problem football has never been very patient with. He was small, really small. Not the kind of player scouts immediately fell in love with. Not the kind of player who dominated youth matches through strength or speed, and certainly not the type most people imagined would one day become one of Europe's best midfielders. In modern football, size often creates first impressions, power gets noticed, athleticism gets attention. Vitinha had neither. What he had was something much harder to measure. He thought faster. While others reacted to the game, he seemed to predict it. He could see spaces before they opened, find passes before they existed, and make difficult decisions look effortless. The problem was that intelligence rarely stands out immediately, especially when you're surrounded by bigger, stronger players. So while other young talents generated excitement and headlines, Vitinha quietly developed in the background. Never the loudest, never the most talked about, never the obvious choice. But year after year, he kept improving. The doubts never disappeared. If anything, they followed him everywhere. Too small, too weak, not physical enough. Football kept finding reasons to question him, yet Vitinha kept giving football reasons to be wrong. Because while many players were trying to prove how strong they were, he was learning how to control a game. And without realizing it, the quiet boy everyone overlooked was slowly building the foundation for something much bigger. Something that would eventually force the entire football world to pay attention. For Vitinha, football was never about proving people wrong. At least, not in the beginning. It was about proving something to himself. As he continued developing in Porto's academy, the dream that once felt distant slowly started becoming real. Not because he was the most talented player of his generation, not because he was receiving endless hype, but because every year, he became a little better, a little smarter, a little more complete. Coaches began to notice what others often missed. His composure, his vision, his understanding of space. The game seemed to move at a different speed when the ball reached his feet. While other young players relied on physical advantages, Vitinha was building an identity around something else. Control. He didn't need to outrun opponents. He didn't need to overpower them. He simply needed to outthink them. And that mentality would become the foundation of his entire career. Slowly, the quiet kid from Portugal was climbing through the ranks. The dream of playing at the highest level no longer felt impossible. For the first time, it felt within reach. But football has a way of testing players when opportunity finally arrives, because talent can get you noticed, potential can create excitement. But the jump from promising youngster to elite footballer is where most dreams begin to fall apart, and Vitinha was about to face the first real challenge of his career. The challenge arrived sooner than expected. Like many young players trying to break into professional football, Vitinha quickly discovered that talent alone wasn't enough. The gap between youth football and the senior game was enormous. Mistakes were punished faster, space disappeared quicker, and opportunities were far more difficult to earn. Even at Porto, one of Europe's best development clubs, nothing was guaranteed. Every season brought new competition, new expectations, new pressure. For a player who had spent most of his life hearing the same doubts, it would have been easy to disappear into the background. Many talented youngsters do. Vitinha didn't. Instead, he kept improving. quietly, patiently, without demanding attention. Then came a move that would become one of the most important chapters of his career: Wolverhampton Wanderers. For many fans, it looked like an ordinary loan move. For Vitinha, it was something much bigger. It was his first real test outside Portugal, a chance to prove he could survive in one of the toughest leagues in the world, the Premier League. But things didn't go as planned. Minutes were limited. Opportunities came and went. And from the outside, it looked like another talented player struggling to find his place. Many footballers would have viewed that experience as a setback. Vitinha treated it as a lesson. He learned. He adapted. He grew stronger mentally. Most importantly, he returned to Portugal with something he didn't have before: perspective. For the first time, he truly understood what it would take to reach the highest level. And when he came back to Porto, something had changed. The hesitation was gone. The confidence was growing. The game seemed slower. The decisions became sharper. The player many people once doubted was starting to look different. Soon, Porto fans weren't just seeing potential, they were seeing influence. The small midfielder who had spent years trying to convince people he belonged was beginning to control matches at one of Europe's biggest clubs. And for the first time, football was starting to notice. But the biggest opportunity of his life was still waiting. Because somewhere in Paris, one of the richest clubs in the world was looking for the future of its midfield, and they had just found him. When Vitinha arrived at Paris Saint-Germain, he entered a world built around superstars: Lionel Messi, Neymar, Kylian Mbappe. Every headline belonged to them, every camera followed them, every conversation revolved around them. And in many ways that was a good thing, because while the football world focused on PSG's biggest names, Vitinha was able to grow without carrying the same spotlight. At first he looked like another talented midfielder trying to find his place among global icons. But inside the club, people were beginning to notice something different. Whenever PSG needed control, Vitinha provided it. Whenever matches became chaotic, he brought calm. Whenever pressure increased, he seemed to become more comfortable. He wasn't the player scoring the goals, he wasn't the player selling the shirts. But slowly, he was becoming something far more important: the player connecting everything. The engine behind the stars, the midfielder making the entire team function. Yet even as his influence grew, most fans still didn't fully appreciate what they were watching. Because football often celebrates the final touch, the goal, the assist, the moment. It rarely celebrates the player who creates order out of chaos. Vitinha was becoming one of those players. Then PSG began to change. The era of superstar football was slowly coming to an end. One by one, the biggest names started leaving. First Messi, then Neymar, eventually even Mbappe moved on. Suddenly the spotlight that had protected Vitinha disappeared. And with it came something new: responsibility. For the first time in his career, he wasn't hiding behind bigger names. He was expected to lead, expected to control games, expected to become one of the faces of a new PSG. The pressure was bigger than ever, but so was the opportunity. Because the player football once ignored was about to step onto the biggest stage of his life. And this time, nobody would be looking anywhere else. For years, football saw Vitinha as a talented player. Now, it was about to see something completely different: a leader. As PSG entered a new era, the club no longer revolved around superstar names. The old project was gone. The spotlight that once belonged to Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe had faded. What remained was a younger team, a hungrier team, a team searching for a new identity. And at the center of it all was Vitinha. The same player many people once believed was too small for elite football. The same player who spent years being overlooked. Now, every important match seemed to flow through him. The ball found him, the responsibility found him, and the pressure found him. But unlike so many players before him, Vitinha didn't shrink under the weight of expectations. He grew. Game after game, his influence became impossible to ignore. He wasn't just participating anymore, he was controlling the tempo, the rhythm, the direction of the match. Everything seemed to move through him. Then came the biggest challenge in club football, the Champions League. For years, PSG had chased European glory. They had spent fortunes, signed superstars, changed managers, yet the trophy always slipped away. Now, the responsibility belonged to a completely different generation, and Vitinha was one of the players carrying it. The deeper PSG advanced into the competition, the bigger his performances became. Pressure that breaks most players seemed to sharpen him. The biggest stages brought out his best football. And when the defining moments arrived, Vitinha was everywhere. Demanding the ball, escaping pressure, controlling matches, making impossible situations look simple. Suddenly, football wasn't asking whether he belonged at the highest level anymore. Football was asking whether he had become one of the best midfielders in the world. Then came the moment that changed everything. The Champions League final. The stage every player dreams about. The stage where careers are remembered forever. And while millions expected the headlines to belong to somebody else, it was Vitinha who stole the show. Calm, composed, in complete control. The boy who had spent years hidden behind bigger names was now dominating the biggest match in club football. The player football once overlooked had become impossible to ignore. A Champions League winner, then another, 2 European crowns, one of the most important players on the continent, and perhaps the most remarkable part of all, he never changed who he was. No drama, no controversy, no desperate need for attention, just football, just excellence, just a quiet determination that had been there from the very beginning. The world had finally noticed what Vitinha had known all along. He belonged, and after years of being underestimated, football was finally ready to see him for what he had become. For most football fans, greatness is loud. It's the goals, the celebrations, the headlines, the endless attention that follows the game's biggest stars. Vitinha's story was different. There were no viral moments that made the world instantly fall in love with him. No superstar reputation from the age of 16. No promises that he would become football's next phenomenon. For years, he existed in the background. Too small, too quiet, too easy to overlook. While football searched for its next superstar, Vitinha kept doing something far less exciting. He kept improving. One training session at a time. One match at a time. One challenge at a time. The doubts never completely disappeared. But neither did his belief, and slowly, the things people once viewed as weaknesses became his greatest strengths. His patience, his intelligence, his composure, his ability to stay calm while everyone else rushed. Today, Vitinha stands where very few players ever reach. A 2-time Champions League winner, one of the most influential midfielders in world football, the heartbeat of a team that conquered Europe. Not because he was the fastest, not because he was the strongest, but because he mastered something far more important: control. Then, he was a small boy from Portugal, trying to convince football that he belonged. Now, he is one of the players defining modern football's biggest matches, and perhaps that's the most remarkable part of his story. Football spent years searching for its next superstar, looking for the loudest names, the brightest lights, the biggest personalities, and while everyone was looking somewhere else, Vitinha quietly became one. Because greatness doesn't always arrive with noise, sometimes it arrives in silence. And by the time the world finally notices, it's already taken over.